Today we're going to have a look at some pressure points that can be created by bits, roughly in descending order of frequency. It's incredibly important to understand where a bit applies pressure, otherwise you're giving signals to the horse somewhat blindly. Knowing the pressure points allows you to make informed choices about bit selection, fit and rein use, and helps you interpret the horse's responses more accurately. So starting with the tongue. The tongue is probably the most obvious pressure point when it comes to bitting, and it's most commonly used pressure point with most bits. It offers a relatively broad surface area, which allows pressure to be distributed more evenly compared to other structures in the mouth. The outer edges of the tongue are more sensitive than the central portion. Many horses generally prefer tongue pressure when used in a gentle and considerate way. However, excessive or constant pressure on the tongue can prevent the horse from swallowing. Not only is this uncomfortable for the horse, but it can create tension throughout the body. Through muscular chains that run from the tongue, through the neck, and into the torso and hind limbs, excessive tongue pressure can inhibit relaxation and hind limb engagement. Mouthpieces that have minimal tongue pressure redistribute tongue pressure elsewhere, usually onto the bars of the mouth. So bits with nice wide ports have less tongue pressure than other bits, but that pressure is now on the bars instead. Mouthpieces with some tongue pressure include smooth lozenges or flexible non-jointed bits. The pressure is generally well distributed across a smooth and even surface area. Bits with increased tongue pressure often have designs that create a smaller or sharper pressure point in the tongue that increases the pressure felt by the horse. And excessive tongue pressure are mouthpieces like the correction port that have sharp right angles right into the tongue and can suck the tongue up into the narrow port, which is wholly unpleasant for the horse. And bits like the chiffney that are really narrow and have a V-shaped mouthpiece to amplify pressure into the tongue. These absolutely should not be used as a riding bit and are for in-hand use only. They're often called stallion bits, and that's generally because they are severe. The next most frequent pressure point created by bits is the bars of the mouth. The bars are the interdental space between the front teeth and the back molars, where there are no teeth and the bit rests directly onto the gums of the lower jaw. This area has relatively little soft tissue covering the bone, making it quite sensitive. Some horses are more tolerant of bar pressure than others, depending on individual anatomy, bone density and previous experiences. Bits with minimal bar pressure are non-jointed bits or mullen mouth bits that cannot bend around the mouth and primarily apply pressure on the tongue. Jointed bits will create some bar pressure as they bend and squeeze around the mouth. Because of their design, single joints tend to have more squeeze than double joints, and generally the more straight the cannons are, the more squeeze, and so the more bar pressure. And finally, the mouthpieces with increased bar pressure tend to be ported bits where the tongue can sit comfortably under the port, so most of the pressure is coming straight down onto the bars. Most bits create some degree of lip raising action. In many cases, the lips simply move freely with the bit and the action is minimal. However, certain bits, particularly gags and especially running gags, use lip elevation as a primary form of action. You can feel this on your own horse, if they allow it, by hooking a finger gently around the lip and applying pressure upwards. You'll feel a natural range of motion before the tissue begins to stretch. Beyond that point, the sensation quickly becomes uncomfortable. You can replicate the sensation on your own lip to understand how quickly it transitions from neutral to unpleasant to painful. Some horses naturally have a larger or smaller smile, meaning the corners of the mouth sit in slightly different positions. This variation affects bit fit and means that some horses will feel even a small amount of lip raising pressure much more intensely than others. Another form of lip pressure is often an unintended side effect of loose ring bits, where the lip can become pinched between the ring and the mouthpiece. Many loose ring bits now come with sleeves to reduce this risk, and bit guards can also be added to help protect the lips. You can tell how much lip pressure a bit has by literally standing next to the horse and pulling the reins and seeing how much the bit pulls the lips. Bits with normal amounts of lip pressure are snaffle bits and most curb bits where the curb strap is not too loose. A bit more lip pressure would include the bevel and Wilkie bits, where we have some leverage and rotation of the cheek, but the mouthpiece can still slide upwards as the cheek rotates. Then building on that, more lip pressure are those with more leverage and more ability for the mouthpiece to slide upwards as the cheek rotates. And those with excessive lip pressure have even more leverage and ability for the mouthpiece to slide up the bit. And as mentioned earlier, the running gags where the cheek of the bit can slide up the bridle cheek piece, pulling the mouthpiece up and potentially causing damage to the lip. The cheek or side of the mouth is often an overlooked pressure point in bitting. When one rein is used independently or when more pressure is applied to one rein than the other, the bit naturally slides through the mouth. When this happens, the cheek piece of the bit on the opposite side presses into the side of the mouth, encouraging the horse to turn its head. This is why bits commonly used for young or green horses, such as Fulmars or full cheek snaffles, have extended cheek pieces. These provide a larger surface area, amplifying the lateral aid and helping the horse to learn to associate a single rein aid with turning the head. As horses become more educated, they generally no longer need this additional guidance, and shorter or less defined cheek pieces are often sufficient. While not technically part of the bit itself, some riders add bit guards with burrs or plastic spikes. These dramatically increase pressure on the side of the mouth and can significantly amplify the turning aid, often far more than intended. Now moving on to the poll. Most non-snaffle bits create pressure on the poll. Generally, the more leverage in the bit, the more poll pressure is created. Here are some examples of the poll pressure scale through bit mechanics. Gag bits can often create more poll pressure than curb bits because they're often used without a curb strap. We'll discuss gag bits in a separate video, but most bit and bridle fitters will have seen some sort of evidence of excessive poll pressure with this 3-ring Dutch gag, whether it's because of the bit itself or because it's a really common bit and can be put with riders with unbalanced hands and therefore it's used unfairly. It's hard to know. Using curb straps can prevent over-rotation and excessive poll pressure. Poll pressure is often accompanied by lip pressure, as downwards forces on the cheek pieces typically cause the mouthpiece to lift slightly in the mouth. The general intention of poll pressure is to encourage the horse to lower the head, although the horse's response will depend on comfort, training and clarity of the signal. It's important to note that poll pressure is heavily influenced by how the bridle fits. Some bridles have additional padding over the poll, while others vary in width, which affects how pressure is distributed. There's already a baseline level of poll pressure simply from the weight of the bridle. How the bridle sits behind the ears also matters. If it presses into or interferes with the base of the ears, any additional poll pressure from the bit can feel significantly stronger. All curb bits should be used with a curb strap, which usually sits in the horse's chin groove. The material of the curb strap is often overlooked. Many bits come standard with a curb chain, and riders frequently use it without considering alternatives. Curb chains can be great as they should not stretch, so once you know what length it should be, it shouldn't need to change. However, chains are not a smooth surface area for pressure distribution and can make the pressure feel a little sharper than what it actually is. They can also be prone to pinching depending on how hairy the horse is. You can get other curb strap materials such as leather, gel or elastic, or even covers for the chain. If you're going for a slightly spongier option, then just make sure it still engages properly and stops the bit from rotating too much. What you choose to use is a personal decision, as long as you understand what you are using and why. Then some bits, either by deliberate design or as a consequence of their shape, create pressure on the roof of the mouth, or the palate. The palate is a very sensitive area. Certain bits, such as those with correction ports, are designed to target the palate because pressure here often elicits a fast response. The speed of the response is directly related to the sensitivity of the area. This sensitivity is also why, in recent years, single-jointed bits have evolved in design. Many now incorporate a curved shape to reduce the likelihood of contact in the roof of the mouth. Some horses have a particularly low palate, which can make bit fitting more challenging and increase the risk of unintended palate pressure. You can assess palate height by gently opening the horse's lip at the side, with the mouth closed and looking at the incidental space above the tongue. This gives a clear visual of how little room there can be for a bit to sit comfortably. Because every horse has unique anatomy, it's essential to understand both how a bit functions mechanically and how that interacts with the horse's individual mouth. Other bits, mostly combination bits, also apply pressure across the horse's nose. There is a Goldilocks zone for nose pressure. If pressure is applied too low, it sits on the fragile nasal bone. If applied too high, it can affect important facial nerves, and both can potentially cause lasting damage. And linked with nose pressure, some bits often use a back strap that functions similarly to a curb strap but sits higher on the lower jaw rather than in the chin groove. These are more common with bitless bridles, or as mentioned with combination bits, but some curb bits with higher attachment points also apply pressure here. The lower jaw is another sensitive area with thin skin and high concentration of nerves. As with curb straps, it's important to understand both whether pressure is applied here and what material is applying it. A common issue I see, particularly with bitless bridles, is generous padding on the noseband combined with a narrow unpadded backstrap under the jaw. When the system tightens around the entire jaw, the horse may feel comparatively much more pressure on the lower jaw than on the padded nose. If you found this video interesting, then please like and subscribe and consider checking out Equusaurus.com, the home of everything bit and bridle fits, including Bit Mechanics Online, an online library demonstrating the mechanics of over 100 different bits, plus courses and free articles.